Hello YouTubers, this is Grimweird coming back at you with more Enigmatica 2 expert playthrough action. Let's see what's going on. Alrighty, so when last we spoke, I was all excited because this newer version of Enigmatica 2 Expert 1.75, where my last playthrough was 1.68, had a new version of Ice and Fire, which had some changes, including some new armor and some new mechanics, and I was excited to do that. So Ice and Fire 1.83 added a bunch of junk, and so I left you guys last time, I think, wanting to go kill a bunch of dragons. So I killed a bunch of dragons. So in this particular case, one of the things I did was I cleaned out this one dragon lair that was close to my base. If we take a look here, we are at... So here's my base, and this is one of the first ones I did, and it was pretty close to my base. So I cleaned it out and thought this would be a great place to hatch my dragon and keep it sort of, on the temporary basis, have a nice little home for it. By the way, I got this thing as a quest reward, and it cracks me up. Basically, it's a little pet that follows you around and acts as a chest. Anyway, I just thought it was funny. And then you can pick him up and put him down when you need him. And he will also pick things up like a Roomba. So anyway, I thought that guy was funny. But meanwhile, back to that. So I hatched my egg, and that was just, made some netherrack, lit it on fire, put the egg on it, waited about 10 minutes, and poof, baby dragon. I do think you need to stay close to it, so don't wander off, because the egg can despawn, I believe. But anyway, so I took care of that, hatched my dragon, and I fed her and got her to full size, which we'll talk about later. But I was going to put her here and put my dragon forge here and do all this stuff, but she's sort of big. It didn't really dawn on me that I probably didn't need to grow her to full size. But yeah, this is Saffron, a bronze dragon, female. We can see that her wings do not have spots. That's one of the ways you can tell, or I think that's the way you can tell that she's a female. And let's go ahead and pick her back up. So I've got the dragon horn that allows you to summon and then hold her, store her. Also got a dragon bone flute that will, if they're flying around, it will call them down to the ground. Makes a little sound. And then we've got the dragon command staff, which will let you what was I thinking? Oh, will let you tell them where their home point should be and whether they should follow you or stay or just wander. But anyway, so we abandoned the idea of using this as a roost, so let's move out. So let's take a look at where I did build the forge. Basically, Saffron is so huge that we needed to give her plenty of room. So I just decided to build it out here in the middle of nowhere. And had a little bit of problem with her wanting to wander off and fly around and etc. instead of shooting at this. But we could see that we did eventually get the dragon bricks and the blocks of dragon bones and the aperture and the core is in there. You put iron on the left, and it is important that the iron is on the left and dragon blood on the right. And you get the dragon blood from right-clicking an empty bottle on a dead dragon. One key there is that when you take the blood, it uses up any drops that you might get for flesh or scales or hearts, possibly even for eggs, I don't know, but anyway, that's one way you could do it. You put those in there and you have her breathe a bunch, and I will now cut to a Wayback Machine where and show her in action cooking up some Dragonsteel. All right, and we are back. So that was Saffron cooking up some Dragonsteel. Let's take a look at what we made. So we made the pieces of Dragonsteel armor. So each of these, it's the normal, 24 pieces to make a thing. So 8 for the chest, 4 for the boots, 5 for the head, and 7 for the legs. And then you just make them up, and that's pretty normal. And they have really good armor and really good armor toughness. Really good. And so, as you can see, I've already got them enchanted. So if we take a look at that, on the head, I've got Fire Protection 4, Unbreaking 3, Respiration 3, and Aqua Affinity. So that's all good. The only thing I'm really missing there, well, 2 things. I want to put Night Vision and Mending on there if I get a chance to do that. And then on the chest, I've got Protection 4, Unbreaking 3, and Block Reach. I love me some Block Reach. For those that aren't familiar with it, it basically lets you reach much further away. So that's very handy, especially when manually vein mining and stuff. And again, I'd like to put Mending on that. And then the leggings just have Unbreaking 3 and Protection 4. And the boots have Protection 4, Unbreaking, Feather Falling 4, Depth Strider 3, and Mending. I put Mending on the boots because I do take the occasional hard landing with my Ring of the Flying Squid. So I want to make sure that those stay good. So one of the things I wanted to do before I went through all the trouble of making this was I did go to a creative world and generated some of these and verified that 1, they were enchantable, which they are obviously, and then 2, that I had a way to repair them, because I'm not going to go through the trouble of making a bunch of Dragonsteel for repairs. But it does turn out that the magma anvil will go ahead and repair this stuff. So if we throw that on there, boom, it just uses magma or lava, and it repairs it just fine. So we have a way to repair it, so that's all good. If we take a look at that anvil, it was not hard to make. It was 3 magma blocks, which was real easy to get. There was some pretty near to my nether portal. A couple blocks of gold, which if you've been hunting dragons, you have plenty of gold. A normal anvil and some cobblestone. So piece of cake. Doesn't need power, just needs lava. So that is it. This is my enchanting setup. Basically, I did the normal thing where, I just checked a bunch of stuff to see what I want. If nothing was on the list that I wanted, I threw a wooden shovel in there and did like a 1 level enchant on it, just to refresh the list, and kept going. So we are all good to go there. So let's talk about other things that I did. One of the key things I did before, let's take a look at the lairs. Let's do that first. So this one I had found first near my base, and I continued searching out to the coast here and didn't find any more. So I just sort of searched in a line like this. And so then I came back and blah, blah, blah. And then the next time I wanted to go back up at this direction and pick a bunch of flowers. Basically scanning for dragon lairs using the scanner from Scannable with a block card in it that scans for pile of gold. Works fine. The scanner with 2 range increases has a range of roughly 100, maybe high 90s in blocks, which, a chunk is 16 blocks. So that's, 4 or 5 chunks that you can see, but then these are also tend to be underground. So maybe, a 3 chunk radius whenever I did a scan at ground level. So I didn't scan exhaustively. Basically, I ran around, picking flowers, mystical flowers for Britannia, um, picking up shale for the astral sorcery gems out of lake beds, picking up anything that I needed, all of the open caves and open ravines that were around. I dropped down into them and grabbed any Thumbcraft Viz crystals that I needed. So basically, I very much multitasked through all of this while searching for these. So I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 while I was sort of doing that. And I went and hit all of those. And that's how I got all of these scales and blood and what have you. Now it turned out what I wanted was a bunch of stage 5 females, so I'd get a lot of treasure and eggs. What I got was a lot of stage 4 males, so I only got 1 egg out of all of these. So that was sort of anticlimactic. Lots of stage 4 males. If we take a look at what these look like underground, zoom down here to... So here's one. You can tell by the lack of yellow dots that I have picked up most of the gold. Then if we go down another level, here's another one. So they're actually pretty close to each other. And again, I've picked up most of the gold. Another thing I did, which you can sort of see here, is that as I did this, I switched my scanner over to chests and then scanned for chests. And I also ran out to a few dungeons here and there that were near to the dragon lairs, since I already had them illuminated with the cave illuminator and often had a peace candle there too, so nothing could spawn down there. So a lot of times while I was getting these dragon lairs, I would then bust through the walls and go hit a dungeon or two. And that has helped me out in a way that I'll talk about later. So what kinds of stuff did I get from all of this? Well, obviously I got my Dragonsteel armor, which was the main goal. I got lots of skulls. Most of these are stuff I killed. Some of them were just surface bones that I looted. One interesting thing, which I didn't realize, is that another big change that is very useful to Ice and Fire is that these charred stones and stuff now have a use. So if we hit U and use on these, you can combine them to make ash, and sometimes on the surface roosts there is just a bunch of ash. And ash, if we hit use on that, you can combine 9 ash to get a block of coal coke. And obviously coal coke early in the game is wonderful for making steel, and the immersive engineering coke oven is slow as hell. So if we take a look at this, one of the ground level roosts that I found while I was running around, I just wanted to see what a stage 2, stage 3 above ground thing had. It had a bunch of ash, it had a bunch of charred gravel, a bunch of charred stone, a bunch of charred grass blocks, etc. I combined them all up, and I ended up with basically almost a stack and a half of blocks of coal coke. So that is a ton of coal coke. And in the future, if I play Enigmatica 2 again, or anything with Ice and Fire, one of the first things I might do in this game is just make a kamikaze run to run towards a dragon thing, vein mine a bunch of charred stone, pick it up, and then run for it. Especially if I've found a fire charm in a village so that I'm immune to its fire. You can just run in there, grab all this stuff, and boom, you've got coal coke, which means you have steel super fast as you find a dragon, which they aren't that hard to find above ground usually. So what other things did I get? I got a bunch of armor, which I deleted, so I kept some of it, but most of it is deleted. A bunch of potions, which I may or may not ever use. A bunch of books, which some of these will come in handy, but most of them I won't ever use. Just lots and lots of stuff. I also got, more importantly, lots of nuclear craft fuels. So a bunch of californium 252, plutonium 238, uh, uranium 238, neptunium 236, some plutonium, which is good, curium 343, and litherite, which I'll come back to later, but that's also sort of cool to have. But more importantly, I got a bunch of californium 250, which let me build a bunch of californium RTGs. Each one of these pumps out 750 RF per tick, I think. And I now have a bunch of them. I got like one up there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I got 10 of them. So yeah, 10 of those. So that's like 7,500 RF per tick from those. And they're not too hard to build as long as you've got a decent amount of lead on you. So if we look at the RTGs, californium, graphite's real easy. That is just smelting some coal or charcoal. So that's a piece of cake. The californium 250 is what you get from the dragons. Tough alloy is not too bad at all. Once you have an alloy furnace, and I've found one nuclear craft vein with boron and lithium, but those are actually pretty easy. So really the main thing slowing you down from making all those RTGs is it does take quite a bit of lead. The graphite block's pretty easy, but you need, a decent amount of lead. But really not too hard to make at all. And so I got a bunch of those things. So that's sort of what I got from the dragons. Let's talk a bit about what my strategy was, because I did do some specific things to help me get further in the game before I went on my dragon hunt. So before I went off and grabbed all of these, I knew that there were some time-sensitive things. In other words, time-intensive might be a better word, things that I would need to do. I wanted to generate a bunch of cobblestone for a deep dark portal, and also for plugging into a recycler to make scrap to make UU matter. So I wanted to get all of that stuff moving. I also wanted to get, what else was there? Oh, I knew I was going to need a ton of latex, so I wanted to get that moving. So I wanted to get a latex processing unit, a block placer, and some tree fluid extractors to get some latex moving. And pardon me, I have to cough. And as you can see, I have made a ton of latex and a ton of tiny dry rubber. But I wanted to get this all chugging for the couple dozen hours I spent hunting dragons. When we take a look at cobblestone generation, I wanted to get that moving also, and UU matter. So here we just have alternating lava and waters with cobblestone underneath them. And then when you have that grid, you can slap transfer nodes from extra utilities 2 on them. And if you right click on them, you can put in an upgrade mining, which allows mining of cobblestone. And you can also put in 4 upgrade speeds. This costs a lot of gold, but gold isn't going to be an issue if you're going to be a dragon hunter. So made a bunch of these and transfer pipes, and I'm sending that into a compacting drawer. This first compacting drawer is locked to cobblestone compressed and double compressed, which then feeds over into this one, which is double, triple, and quadruple, which then feeds over into this one, which is quadruple, quintuple, sextuple. You need, I think, 4 sextuple compressed cobblestones to get to the deep dark. Shut up, you. And then also this is fast enough that I'm generating that while also feeding a couple of UU matter recyclers. So the recyclers have a chance of creating scrap. So basically, let's speed these up so you can see what it does. So basically it'll occasionally create scrap from cobblestone, so you just feed a bunch of cobblestone with it. The scrap goes over into the matter fabricator. So what the matter fabricator does is it basically turns power into UU matter. UU matter is universally usable matter. You can think of it almost like if you have a 3D printer, this is the stuff that you use to 3D print your goods. And so we wanted to get this going early in the game because it's a slow process and an energy intensive process, but we're going to have a lot of good use for this later in the game for both crafting and for meeting certain goals. So I got 2 recyclers feeding into that. I've got cobblestone feeding into that. And then basically I just want as much power that I'm not using going into this bad boy as possible. So you can see it's going up, it's not exactly fast. And that's with all of this power feeding into it. But basically it'll take as much power as you can give it. Oh, and that's my high voltage line, which I keep forgetting about, but I'll explain that in a moment. But to show you how this bad boy will just use all the power you give it, let's go ahead and see what happens when we jack up all the power output from these RTGs. So now if we take a look at this bad boy, it is going much faster. And then if we also give it scrap, which acts as a multiplier, you can see it has bursts of super speed. So what can you do with this matter fabricator, and why have I put so much effort and power into it? If we take a look at that, we're going to feed that matter fabricator generated UU matter into the replicator. And the replicator, well, first of all, you can scan stuff with the scanner. So here's sort of a list of things that you can, in theory, scan. Litherite crystals, RF tools, machine frames, machine cases, iron casing, machine blocks, ultimate control units. It's a lot of the crafting things that you are going to use. Advanced machine casings, the thermal expansion machine frame. I love that one. So these are just a lot of things that you're going to be able to use to make blocks. So for instance, if we take a look at a magma crucible, it uses a thermal expansion machine frame. So instead of crafting this, I can make it out of UU matter. So that saves me from making all of this stuff and going through there. And I think a thermal expansion machine frame costs about 40 millibuckets. So you can see at 1500, 40 millibuckets. Now 40 millibuckets, if you look at how fast I'm making this, well, that's a fair bit of time. But I'm going to be spending a lot of times, I have spent a lot of time hunting dragons, going to spend a lot of time on my ME system, going to spend a lot of time on building a base. So I can just let this sit here and chug. And then once I make a machine frame, I can scan it into the scanner, and then I can store that pattern in a pattern storage, and then I can make the replicator and use the replicator to print out all of the machine frames I want at roughly 40 millibuckets each. So that's why this is so important. And this is why I've got all of my power going into that when I'm not actively crafting or doing something else. Which brings me to this high voltage line that I forgot about and flew into. So this array up here generates another 1100 roughly RF per tick, in addition to those 750. So I wanted to go ahead and use this as well, because why not? So I've got high voltage connectors and high voltage wires coming over to a relay, which then feeds into a redstone breaker. So as it stands now, these, you can see these have only 328. They're pretty much drained, these two capacitors. If I flick this off, I now shut off this leg from the redstone breaker from going over there. And now power is going back into the HV capacitors. So if I'm actively crafting and doing stuff, I can do that. But if I'm running around, I can do that and just send that extra power over here. So that was one of the things that I started cooking. I started getting that going with the cobblestone generation, and just one recycler and one UU matter. And then as I came back with more and more Californium, I made more and more RTGs and slapped them on there, made a second recycler, etc. So that has gotten me a nice start on UU matter, and I'm real happy with that. So another thing that I wanted to sort of get cooking, let's see, I talked about the latex because I know I'm going to need a bunch of that. Talked about the UU matter and cobblestone because we're going to need that. The other thing I did was fishing. So when you make a dragon, you got to make a bunch of dragon meal. And so, dragon meal. So to grow your dragon, you got to feed it. So I knew I was going to need a bunch of bones, but I got a bunch of bones from my mob farm, so that was no big deal. But you also need a bunch of meat. So the easiest form of meat is usually fish for me. So if we take a look at that, I have a fish pond over here. I started out, I got a couple of emeradic. Let's see if we take a look at that fishing net. I got a couple empowered emeradic crystals early, in like just my first one or two dragon lairs. So I went ahead and made some fishing nets from actually additions. They're not the fastest thing, but they require no power, and and no fuel, and so they're pretty no muss, no fuss. Basically, you just slap them down as like a slab above some water, and they will just spray fish up in the air very slowly. So what I did also was I made an item collector from Cyclic, and a hopper and a box to put the stuff in. So I let that go for my first couple of dragons, and then occasionally I would come in here and hit it with some tick accelerator from Time in a Bottle, just to make sure I got some fish. And basically what I was looking for was the next stage in my fishing evolution, which is the automatic fishing net. So the automatic fishing, I pretty much had it there, but... So the automatic fishing net from Cyclic, it requires either pufferfish or clownfish. So you got to do some fishing to get one of those two fish before you move on. And trap chests. And sometimes you can get the tripwires you need for trap chests from fishing as well. But they're super cheap, so no big deal. So after a couple of dragon hunts and cleanups, I came back, and sure enough, I had some pufferfish and some clownfish, so I was able to make these. These are much faster. What you do with these is you put a fishing rod in them, and you power them, and then they fish when they have fish around them, or water around them. So this one I needed some power, so I made a wind generator. This was not really doing the trick, so for a while I had one of my Californium RTGs over here in addition to the wind generator, and that sped this all up much, much better. Another thing I got with the fishing nets was fishing poles. You do get a bunch of fishing poles, magic fishing poles, while you're fishing. So we got some of those. So I was able to cobble together nice fishing stone or fishing poles to put in these three things, and get these going. They're sort of turned off now because I sort of met my goals with this apparatus. So you can see a little fishing animation, yada yada. So I've left it going a little bit because the wind generator is only enough to power one, and this one fishing pole going slowly has both Unbreaking 3 and Mending on it, so I don't have to worry about fixing it. It actually is going to last forever. So I've sort of been leaving this go because you get a lot of nice bows and fishing rods and fish from it, and the occasional books, which are also handy. Some of these books and some of the Dragon Lair books was how I got this stuff done so well. One of the things I want to do also is a lot of the fishing rods come with mending. And so as soon as I get my industrial 4 going up and going, I'm going to pull mending off of some of these spare fishing rods I have and put them on the rest of my armor. Okay, so anyway, we talked about stage 1, stage 2. Stage 3 was I needed also some shellfish. So the Pam's Harvest Craft water traps can be made. You can take a bunch of fish, turn it into fish bait with string, and these will catch things like raw crabs and turtles and scallops, your basic shellfish. I didn't really need those for my dragon. I needed those for, if you notice my health, I'm up to purple hearts. So you start with 10 red hearts. Every 10 food that you eat that is different, you get a new heart. So then there's 10 orange hearts, 10 yellow hearts, 10 green hearts, 10 blue hearts, and now I'm up into the purple hearts. So I have a lot of health, and that leads me to the next thing. So with all of these fish coming in, obviously I could eat one of each and get a bunch of food that way. So the other thing I can do is put them through my kitchen here and get a bunch of cooked stuff that way. And that sort of leads me to the other thing I did in between stuff. Was one of the rewards I got was a Farming for Blockheads market guy, which I had never used before, but he's pretty awesome. So if we click on him, he will trade emeralds for seeds, which you could use to make all of this stuff for Pam's cooking, Pam's Harvest Craft. So what I did was I just started buying those. I would buy them, put the ones in here singles, run them through here, my garden cloche for a little bit. God, I do not need any more tomatoes. I sort of overmade tomatoes. So when I was not out hunting dragons, if I was just playing this on my laptop in front of the TV, what I could do was just, throw one of these seeds in here, let it go for a few seconds to get a few of each fruit or vegetable or what have you, and then move on to the next one, and then dump them all over in my Pam's Harvest Craft. And once you're over here, you can see this is just full of tons and tons of crap. And when you click on here and search for not, if there's anything in there that you haven't eaten, it'll show up there and you can open it up and eat it. So that's how I got all those hearts in my health bar, was that. And again, to give yourself a reason to eat, I do lots of vein mining. One of the first things I did was make an unbreakable pickaxe. So I constantly had tons of different foods, like one each, like one blackberry smoothie, one blackberry juice, one blackberry ice cream. And then whenever I ran out to these dragon lairs, quite often, since I had illuminated them with a cave illuminator first, and had a peace candle on them, there were other tunnels and ravines and whatnot that I either broke into on my way to them or that were very near them, so I could just jump over there really quick and do a quick vein mining of anything, or mining of stuff, or hitting extra dungeons for things. So when you're doing all that vein mining, you get to eat lots of food. So that also worked out real great for me. So one of the things that I was excited about going through a lot of those dungeons that were near dragon lairs was I did end up getting a lot of iridium shards out of dungeon chests. And that is nice because it takes 36 iridium shards to make 4 iridium ingots, which is what it takes to make an iridium reinforced plate, which is what it takes to make a diode, which is what it takes to make a void ore miner controller tier 1. So I said I would come back to litherite. Void ore miner, the void ore miner series just pulls in a ton of ore, so it's really handy to get that ASAP. So the things that are slowing you down are basically these interconnects require connectors, which requires blocks of tin. So these blocks of tin is just a vast amount of tin. So just 2 of these, just this piece of it requires 2, which requires 8, which requires 32 blocks of tin. 32 blocks of tin. And that's 64 blocks of tin. And then you have to make, pardon me, I have to cough again. And then you've also got to make the 24 structure panels and 24 structure frames. So it's just vast amounts of tin. But then the other thing that we got to worry about, tin you can get. That's just something you do. I'm going to make a digital miner for Mechanism probably. Maybe an industrial foregoing mining laser tuned with to look for tin, so we can get that done. But the litherite is a pain in the ass. So litherite, you can only get litherite from void ore miners. Or the one other way to get it, other than chests and dragon lairs, and the void ore miner, which you can't do that until you have litherite, is to do a bunch of these terrestrial artifacts. And those terrestrial artifacts require tons of empowered stuff through the empower, which is a ton of energy and a ton of time. And you need about, how many did I think you needed? I think to get enough litherite, you need maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 70 and 90 litherite. So that's like 70 and 90 times this recipe. And so that's just expensive and a pain in the ass. But I do have, I did get from the Dragon Lairs 8, so that's, a decent percentage of the way in. And the UU Matter replicator will replicate litherite. Yes, litherite crystals. Now, if it's unless it's changed between 1.68 and 1.75, litherite is 60 millibuckets each, so it's expensive. One of the more expensive things that you can put through with UU Matter. So at 60 each, I've calculated I'm going to need about 4,600, 4,700 millibuckets to just generate the litherite I need. So we're about, a third of the way there. But that's still not too bad. We're moving pretty quick now. So we might be able to make that work. Because it's not like I need to use a ton of buckets up for a lot of stuff. Another thing is that a block of tin, you can replicate that at about 13.5 millibuckets of UU matter. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is that we can try and fill in some of the blocks of tin with that as well. So we're just going to let that cook. We got to work on an ME system. We got to work on building a base as opposed to just a platform currently. There's lots of stuff to work on that I can do while I'm waiting for UU matter to catch up to where I want to be. So what else has gone on? I don't think anything too major else has changed. ME system is ready to roll. We got the advanced inscribers. Every once in a while I just throw a stack of everything in here, so that's good. We've got tons of stuff built up, so we're basically all ready to go. Got tons of these going. It's got a bunch of pure and normal flukes crystals cooked up, so we're basically all ready to go. I just need to build the rest of it and then figure out where I want it, and then start assembling it. So that's going to be sort of my next main goal. I also got to build the base. You may notice I threw one of the dragon skulls up here on top of my power thing. I'm thinking I might go with sort of a dragon theme, since that's sort of been a central point of this, making the Dragonsteel armor and doing dragon lairs. So I might build a big dragon fortress and decorate it with dragon skulls and yada yada. So I can start working on that while I'm waiting for the UU matter to catch up. And that is about it for the base and the changes. Here's some of the bows I got out of my fishing pit. I already have everything I need to make a power 4 unbreaking infinity, mending, yada yada yada. So eventually I'll make a boss killer bow. This guy, a flux infused bow. So later in the game, when I want to go after big game like the Chaos Dragon, I'll make one of these guys. I'll be able to make it infinity, power 4, multi-shot 4, yada yada yada. And I'll already have all of the enchantments I need thanks to fishing for bows. Pretty sure there's a multi-shot 4 in here somewhere too. Yeah, there's power 4, multi-shot 4 bow. None of these bows are going to be as good as my laser gun. However, this bad boy, when you put all of the enchants on it, can do just a crap ton of single shot damage. So that makes it cool for big game. What else? Tons of fishing rods. Again, I can strip off bending and off a lot of these and put them onto the rest of my armor as soon as I make a industrial foregoing enchantment remover thingy, which takes enchantments off and turns them into books. I think that's it. I have tons of health. I have tons of latex. I have cobblestone, and I'm getting a good chunk of UU matter. So things are looking up. I have a bunch of monster spawners. I've got a blaze, 2 zombies, and a skeleton in cardboard boxes, but I haven't really set them up and increased my mob farm. I also went ahead and tracked down a arc furnace electrodes blueprint and made graphite electrodes, so I can set up a mob farm, and I can hook it up to an arc furnace recycler, but I just don't really need to yet. This armor is going to be what I'm going to be wearing until I get to in-game armor. So I'm pretty much good to go. So I'm going to hold off on a mob farm until I actually need some of the materials from it. So anything else? I did make a little bit of inroads into astral sorcery and not much of one. Just made some of the initial stuff. So that also leads me into the next thing. I like to plan ahead and get things moving that I'm going to need. So while I was looking for dragon lairs, I collected flowers. So I have, tons of each flower petal for all of the Britannia stuff. So I probably, except for maybe light gray flowers, have all the flowers I'm going to need for Britannia. And while I was mining and hunting dragons, I also picked up all the crystals I could find. So I probably have all the Viz crystals I'm going to need for Thaumcraft for Eternity. So that is good. And along that same line of thought, if I start thinking about what I'm going to need moving forward that I can put in motion now while I work on my ME system, we're going to need things like liquid starlight. So if we go to astral sorcery, I did make a light well. Actually, I made 4 light wells. So I might, before I work on my ME system, just set those up somewhere and set up a collection system for those, so we can start building up a tank full of light, liquid light or liquid starlight, so that we've got that going. So that when we come back to astral sorcery, we are all ready to go there. Other things that we might need. Trying to think. There was something else. There was one other thing that I wanted. Oh, Britannia mana. So that was the other thing that I want to sort of get cooking now. So I might also work on setting up a pure daisy and a mana pool and some Indo Flames to start generating a few pools worth of mana. I haven't thought about it yet, but the fact that I'm swimming in coal coke means I'm going to have fuel for eternity for these Indo Flames. So I'll probably set up 4 to 6 mana pools and some Indo Flames and some mana spreaders, so that when I circle back around to Britannia, I'll have tons of mana stored up. And again, I'll probably set up those 4 light wells and get those automated, so that when I circle back around to astral sorcery, I have a ton of liquid starlight saved up. So we'll get those moving along. Just like while I was hunting dragons, I worked on latex and cobblestone and UU matter and food. I can now, while I'm working on my ME system, I can work on liquid starlight and mana for Britannia, so that when I come back around to those, after I'm done with my ME system, I am good to hit the ground running. So that's sort of the future plan. Another thing I like to think about a lot is power. We've got sort of an insane amount of RTGs there. If those are 750 each and I've got 10 of them, that's 7,500 RF per tick. This is another 1,100, so we're at like 8,600 RF per tick. That's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. So I'm probably going to leave it like that for a while. I would like to get more power for more UU matter. However, really my next step up would be something more complicated and less mobile. Right now, if I decide I need to turn back on my latex processing, I can just grab one of those RTGs, slap it down up here, and boom, I'm powering forestry and my latex stuff. If I need to set up a different machine or something, boom, I just grab an RTG, slap it on there, and I'm good to go. So that's a real handy system. Whereas if I do anything else complicated, that's going to be a lot less portable, and I got to deal with wiring everything. I guess the only other thing that I'm sort of considering getting started would be ore tripling. I don't really need it. The only thing I really need ore tripling for ever, probably in this mod pack, is just getting enough damn tin to make my void ore miners. It takes so much tin. So I'll have to think about that. One of the sort of cheater ways that I might get more tin is if I make a digital miner, I can power it with one RTG, so I can peel off one of those. I can take it to like the nether. I can tell it to just look for tin and maybe lead and uranium, and let it go to town. And it'll be pretty quick if it's only looking for that kind of stuff. I don't really, once I have a void ore miner, I'm never going to be short of copper or iron or any of that crap again. So the only things that I'm really going to be short of in the near future are probably lead, uranium, and tin. Definitely tin. So if I have the digital miner just looking for tin, it'll move real quick. And I'll be able to very quickly get a whole crap ton of tin. So I might do that. And then it's only 2 more machines and some wiring to get to ore tripling. So I could triple the tin. Basically all just in the interest of getting to void miner ASAP. So once I have the void miner going, I don't really have to worry about ore anymore. So that's another thing that I might look into. But I'll probably wait until after I have an ME system. Anyway, let me check the run. Well, I don't need to check my runtime. I've been babbling far too long. Hopefully I don't have to split this video up. But that is sort of where we are at. I'd also like to take a moment to totally jinx myself. I'm pretty far into this pack, and I have not died yet. I haven't died even once. Now, I don't usually die that much anyway, but I usually do something stupid to kill myself, and I haven't done that yet. So that's sort of cool. But I'll die now. I've been keeping all of my experience in this experience pylon, so I had plenty to do enchanting. I've even enchanted all of my portable tanks. Oops, all of my portable tanks are enchanted. This one holds 864 buckets, 384. So I've enchanted those with holding 4. So doing really good on experience. Alright, I'm going to stop babbling. That is the main thing. That's what's going on. Yeah, lots of dragons. UU matter, latex, food, health. That's what it's been about. And now it's going to be about an ME system and starting to build a base. So hopefully in a couple days I'll come back with another episode, and we will have this automated and most of this imported into an ME system. And then we will also maybe have the rough outlines of the start of a base. I got to figure out what I want to build. I definitely want to occupy these 9 claimed chunks and keep them chunk loaded. So I'm thinking maybe a tower and a tower and a tower and a tower in the 4 corners. A couple sub-basements for power generation and ME system. And then a courtyard. Pardon me, I have to cough again. And a courtyard with some grassy area and some botania and some, crops and stuff. Oh, a pigman showed up. So one of the things that market, this guy over here, he draws the critters. So I had to put a fence around my thing. I usually don't worry about the pigmen too much because they're not aggressive. But he was originally standing over on this side of my smelter, and he was close enough that this guy made a beeline for him and chased him around and killed him. And even so, I moved him sort of more central to the base. Still, if anything spawns out here and gets too close, sometimes in the morning there's 4 or 5 zombies at this wall going, "Oh, villager, must kill, must kill." Oh, last thing I was going to show people, again, as you can tell from my zest for an unbreakable pickaxe and my large amount of health from eating tons of food, I have continued my vein mining ways. And one of the things I wanted to show was that I cleared out all around well, not all around it, there's still stuff. Yeah, that looks a little better. I've cleared out all around a nuclear craft super vein, so that people can see that if you haven't seen it before in all of its glory. Oops. Yay for block reach. So that's what these bad boys look like. Sometimes, since I love my eating and love my unbreakable pickaxe, a lot of times I'll just vein mine the crap out of all of this stuff, just to get a feel for where they are and where they're going, so I know what I want to take and what I want to eat, and etc. So yeah, that's looking good. I'm going to clean this all up. I haven't needed it yet, but that's another fun thing. Let's see. That's it. I'll stop babbling now. That's about everything that's going on. I'll see you again next time. Bye.